sell its gas to its eastern neighbours.
It would run 2,615 kilometres from Iran to India through Pakistan.
After more than a decade of negotiation and planning, Iran was confident it was going to happen.
Iranian Foreign Minister Manouchihr Mottaki said the two sides are committed to the project and would not allow any person or group to sabotage it.
And so they built their bit of it.
The work on the Iranian side is almost complete.
Trouble was, Pakistan and India never built their bit. The result is a 1,000-kilometre pipeline capable of delivering enormous quantities of gas to that puddle in the Makran Desert, a few hundred metres from the Pakistani border. On the Pakistani side of the border, there are abandoned construction sites, gas terminals that were never built because the gas never actually arrived. Right now, I'm betting that Pakistan and India are seriously regretting not building their half, because since the Strait of Hormuz has been closed, their fuel reserves are running dangerously low.
Meanwhile, Pakistan is bracing for an energy crunch.
In India, a shortage of LPG has forced some kitchens to turn to firewood.
Things are so bad in Pakistan that the government has taken measures to prevent people from driving to conserve fuel.
Closing schools for 2 weeks. They have also ordered 50% of non-essential services staff to work from home.
Pakistan relies on natural gas for more than a quarter of its energy supply, and it's at risk of running out of it before the end of April. If the pipeline was operating, it would allow Pakistan to bypass the current blockage of the Strait of Hormuz and access gas directly from the source. But they can't. And now, it's too late. As fuel prices continue to grow around the world, there's a lot of chat about ideas for infrastructure that could bypass the Strait of Hormuz. Ideas like this.
A massive canal cutting through the mountains of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, allowing ships to bypass the strait entirely.
Former US Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, now a Fox News contributor, suggested a fast way to build this canal would be to use thermonuclear weapons to clear the terrain.
A dozen thermonuclear detonations, and you've got a waterway wider than the Panama Canal.
Wow. Okay, the fascinating reality is, though, that over the last few decades, there have actually been a lot of projects proposed which could have solved the problem without the use of nuclear weapons. Almost none of those projects have been successful because something keeps getting in the way. I'll give you a hint. It starts with US and ends with A. So, what's going on here? We're in the midst of an entirely man-made energy crisis that is being blamed on Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, and the Iranian government. While they might be to blame for the current situation, they aren't the ones who stopped all the previous attempts to mitigate it. Who did and why? I'm Matt Bevan, and this is If You're Listening. The first and only time in post-World War II history that an American naval ship has been hit by missile fire was 39 years ago in the Persian Gulf.
The USS Stark was patrolling 75 miles northeast of Bahrain when the missiles slammed home. There was a huge fire aboard and many casualties too.
The missiles had been launched from a nearby jet.
The French-made Exocet missile was fired from 16 kilometres away, skimming low over the water and entering the hull through crew quarters below the bridge superstructure.
The USS Stark had been in the Gulf protecting oil and gas tankers as the Iran-Iraq war entered its 7th year.
Both the American and Soviet navies have increased the size of their fleets in the Gulf, the most important oil shipping route in the world. They're trying to deter Iran from attacking the oil exports of countries which support its enemy in the Gulf War, Iraq.
An Iranian attack on an American frigate would be a significant escalation. But the missiles weren't fired by Iran.
It was, the Americans believe, all a dreadful mistake. Iraqi planes fired the missiles at the wrong target.
America was on Iraq's side of that particular conflict.
The Iraqi President Saddam Hussein sent a message to President Reagan saying the attack was accidental.
Reagan accepted Saddam's explanation for the strike, which killed 37 American sailors. But he also put the US Navy on high alert.
Tonight, on Mr. Reagan's orders, American ships in the Persian Gulf are ready to fire if approached by any foreign ship or aircraft.
A year later, that order led to tragedy.
We believe that the cruiser USS Vincennes, protecting itself from what was concluded to be a hostile aircraft, shot down an Iranian airliner over the Straits of Hormuz.
An identification error led to an American ship shooting an Iranian passenger aircraft out of the sky.
The U.S. government deeply regrets this incident.
290 people on board the airliner were killed.
At Dubai Airport, relatives of the victims learned of the tragedy while waiting for the Airbus to arrive.
It was a chaotic period in the Persian Gulf and in the Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Gulf to the rest of the ocean. While the strait wasn't closed to all traffic like it is now, tankers were being set on fire frequently by Iran and Iraq. There was a lot of disruption. In the mid-80s, the amount of oil coming through the Strait of Hormuz had dropped to around 50% of what it had been before the Iran-Iraq war started. The Gulf was an unstable and dangerous place to get a quarter of the world's oil from. There were 37 dead American sailors and 290 dead Iranian air travellers to prove it. In Washington, they were very aware of the situation.
We cannot allow Iran or anybody else to cut off the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz.
The unimpeded flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz is a vital U.S. interest. It's critical to the economic health of the Western world.
If you want to see gas lines that wrap around this entire state of rationing, and you want to see agriculture fuel prices go up, see the Persian Gulf shut off.
The US was in the process of developing its own domestic oil supply, so it wouldn't need to buy oil from the Gulf. But they remained very aware that even with their own supply, they wouldn't be totally insulated from the impact of global oil shocks.
The world oil market is one market, and should Persian Gulf oil supplies be disrupted, the oil prices will rise for everyone. The resulting economic impacts would fall on the United States as well as on all oil-consuming nations, regardless of their sources of supply at the time.
They were extremely aware 40 years ago that a complete closure of the Straits of Hormuz by Iran would be catastrophic for the global economy and would be extremely complicated to fix.
It is possible that under certain circumstances the Straits of Hormuz could be closed. Someone's going to have to come in and clean up, sweep the mines and keep the straits open.
So, they knew this could happen. What were they going to do to stop it? Well, Plan A was to start building up US military capacity in the region to extraordinary levels, hoping to deter Iran from trying to close the strait. Plan B, well, obviously, Plan B would be to find a way to decrease the global economy's reliance on shipping traffic travelling through one very narrow waterway that can easily be held hostage by a hostile regime. In 1990, when the Iran-Iraq War and the subsequent Gulf War were over, about 20% of the global oil supply was going through the Straits of Hormuz. That was 36 years ago. And as of March 2026, when the strait was extremely predictably closed,
about 20% of the world's oil and gas passes through the Strait of Hormuz.
It appears that Plan B is hope that Plan A works. The question is, why? Why has so little been done to deal with this obvious problem? Well, here's the thing. It's not because nobody thought of it. A lot of smart people have had a lot of good ideas for bypassing the strait, and they've been trying to get them operational for decades.
Request you stay farther away at this time.
Back in 1987, for instance, in the midst of the chaos in the Persian Gulf, an extremely nervous-looking German energy expert named Michael Renner explained that because Iran was blocking their oil tankers from getting through the strait, Iraq was finding ways of getting around the problem.
It was compelled to construct a number of pipelines going through Saudi territory, Turkish territory, and also it is using overland routes, again, through Turkey and also through Jordan.
While Michael takes a very big gulp of water there, I'll point out that when he says overland routes, he means trucks.
New pipeline capacity has also been constructed by Saudi Arabia, and together the two countries will have a capacity of about 6.5 million barrels per day by the end of this decade.
So during the 1980s, the Saudis and Iraqis had built pipelines which would carry their oil to the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea, with a large enough capacity to carry a sizable chunk of the region's daily output.
So in other words, 2/3 of these exports no longer have to go through the Strait of Hormuz.
Which worked well for a while. But in the years since, production in the Gulf has nearly tripled, and the pipelines have only marginally increased their maximum capacity. Additionally, the port of Yanbu, where the pipes deliver the oil, doesn't have the infrastructure to load it all onto ships. The pipelines can carry 7 million barrels of oil a day. The port can only handle 3 or 4 million. The lack of capacity isn't because of any technical constraint. They just never bothered to build it. Why? Well, it would cost a lot of money, you see, and apparently nobody really thought that was worth it. They made a bet that Iran would never close the strait, a bet they have now lost. The thing is, a pipeline directly across Saudi Arabia is the best option for bypassing the Strait of Hormuz, purely because it would only have to run through one country. Because exporting oil across land borders can lead to problems when two countries disagree on something.
Turkey has shut off Iraqi oil exports through its pipeline to the Mediterranean.
And oil pipelines made easy targets for insurgent attacks after the US invasion of Iraq, for instance.
It's believed the fire was started by a bomb exploded next to the pipeline by saboteurs.
A proposal to build a pipeline linking the Iraqi oil fields to the Jordanian Red Sea sat in limbo for decades because it would mean that the pipeline ran within walking distance of the Israeli border. Opponents in Iraq argued that it will just mean that their oil ends up in Israel. Others were concerned that if the oil doesn't end up in Israel, the Israeli government will just attack the pipeline. So you can't bypass the Strait of Hormuz from Iraq to the Red Sea because of politics, and you can't bypass Hormuz across Saudi Arabia totally because of a lack of investment. If every pipeline capable of carrying oil around the strait was running absolutely flat chat and just dumping oil directly onto ships, which is technically impossible, you still can't get even a third of the Gulf's oil loaded. But what about gas? Well, back in the 90s, Iran and Pakistan had a bright idea to build a gas pipeline. The gas pipeline was set to deliver up to 5.2 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day from India into Pakistan. When it was first proposed in 1989, that was about 5 times more than Pakistan even needed. So planners looped India into the scheme as well.
Pakistan's foreign minister is pressing India to move ahead quickly on a proposed $7 billion gas pipeline from Iran.
Now, things were off to a rocky start because Pakistan and India are not exactly on the friendliest of terms. So the plan was a bit fraught from the get-go.
Progress has been held up due to bickering over prices and Indian fears over the pipeline's security.
But the project really came off the rails in 2005 when one very prominent critic emerged. You know the guy. The US had started a sanctions program to try and stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons.
The United States fears the pipeline will weaken efforts to isolate Iran over its disputed nuclear program.
The plan was to squeeze Iran economically until they agreed to give up their nuclear weapons program. By 2008, the US had managed to convince India to pull out of the deal by offering them a better one.
The United States and India have agreed to begin plans to construct 6 nuclear plants to help the South Asian nation meet its energy needs.
America and India love our freedom, and we will fight to keep it. Americans who come to this country will see Indian consumers buying McCurry meals from McDonald's.
With India out, Pakistan was the only potential customer left. They seemed very keen. So keen that in 2013 the Pakistanis and Iranians held a ceremony near the border where they welded a few bits of pipe together to show that the project was going ahead. And well, it definitely half went ahead.
Work on the Iran part is almost complete. Construction on the Pakistan side will now begin.
It turns out the pipes being welded together were just props, but the ceremony was enough to get the US riled up and threaten Pakistan with sanctions.
We have serious concerns if this project actually goes forward that the Iran Sanctions Act would be triggered. We've been straight up with the Pakistanis about these concerns.
The US was concerned that if Iran had too many external revenue streams, the sanctions would have less of an impact.
Washington's concerned it will also enable Iran to sell more gas and undermine US sanctions against it.
The Obama administration had its reasons for trying to isolate Iran from the global energy market. But the ultimate failure of that strategy is now contributing to the current crisis. The Pakistanis never officially tore up the deal. They just kind of never got around to building their bit. Iran tried to force them to by pointing out that they had signed contracts, but Pakistan still didn't build it. And as a result, the pipeline still ends at that little puddle in the middle of the desert. In the last few weeks, the US President Donald Trump has been saying that because the US produces its own oil and gas domestically, it's not their problem that the Strait of Hormuz is closed.
You know, we don't use the strait. The United States, we don't need it.
The thing is, when it comes to the global economy, that kind of doesn't matter. Why? Well, do you remember that clip from the US congressional hearing back in the 80s? This one.
The world oil market is one market. And should Persian Gulf oil supplies be disrupted, the oil prices will rise for everyone. The resulting economic impacts would fall on the United States as well as on all oil-consuming nations, regardless of their sources of supply at the time.
The global oil and gas market seems big and complicated, but it's not really. There are producers and there are consumers. There's a million different ways the products get from the producers to the consumers, but it's all one market. If Pakistan can't get gas from the Gulf, either through the Strait of Hormuz or from the Puddle pipeline, they'll bid against the rest of the world to find other sources of gas. That bidding process will drive up the price of that gas. When the Strait of Hormuz closed, stranding all that oil and gas in the Gulf, it meant that the entire world had to start bidding for the stuff that wasn't stranded. Anything that gets in the way of these products being transported from the producers to the consumers is going to affect all consumers. Every bit of oil and gas that can escape the Gulf, no matter where it's going, helps bring down prices. But we can't get it out of there. All the opportunities in the past to avoid a crisis like this were either mothballed due to inertia or blocked by the US. As a result, Pakistan might run out of gas within days, which would see the country grind to a halt. Other countries are similarly desperate. Here in Australia, we probably won't run out of fuel, but it might become extraordinarily expensive.
I knew about the strait, that it would be a weapon, which I predicted a long time ago, predicted all of this stuff.
Donald Trump says he knew about the threat to the Strait of Hormuz before he started this. He says everyone knew. That might be the case.
We're crushing their missiles.
But the people who knew didn't actually do anything to prepare for it if it ever happened. They only had 40 years.
I predicted Osama bin Laden would knock out the World Trade Center. I made that prediction a year before he did it. I said, you better get him. He's a bad guy. I watched him.
Are you curious about curiosities?
Wow!
Fascinated by fun facts?
All completely true.
Wednesday at 8.
Something spectacular.
Yeah. Join host Alex Lee at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery.
Where it's not just the artifacts that are priceless, but also the guests. What's going on?
It's time the Brits gave something back.
It's the only quiz show filmed after dark in a real museum. Tonight at the museum, Wednesday at 8 on ABC and ABC iView. Stay safe this summer and remember your ABCs.
A is for Action Plan.
Use the resources on the ABC's emergency website to create your plan.
Be safe.
Our website is full of tips to help you stay safe in an emergency.
Connect with us.
If your area is under threat, tune into ABC Radio for the most reliable and up-to-date information.
This summer, know your ABCs.
Visit abc.net.au/emergency.
State and territory leaders hold emergency talks on the fuel crisis ahead of tomorrow's National Cabinet meeting. Thousands more US troops arrive in the Middle East as 3 journalists are killed in an Israeli strike on southern Lebanon. Emergency financial support announced for cyclone-affected WA residents as authorities begin to assess the damage.
Kimi Antonelli is victorious at Suzuka.
Mercedes take out the Japanese Grand Prix, leaving Australian Oscar Piastri in second in his first race finish of the season. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Meredith Sheehan. The Prime Minister will meet with state and territory leaders tomorrow in the second emergency National Cabinet meeting since the start of the Middle East war. And much of the focus will be on the pain at the petrol pump and the way that's pushing prices up everywhere. The federal government insists COVID-era restrictions are not on the table, but the states want a coordinated approach.
Fueling up at prices they've never imagined.
I just paid $240 for petrol.
If there's any relief they can give, then that would be great.
With COVID restrictions still raw, the federal government